Good afternoon, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. This afternoon we will have the third speaker in a new series, of dialogue with our ambassadors and high commissioners. For those of you who are not from the professional diplomacy, you may be wondering what's the difference between an ambassador and a high commissioner, right? Does everybody know the answer? What's the difference between an ambassador and a high commissioner? Actually, they have the same rank. But for countries that belong to the Commonwealth, they decided to call each other's ambassador by a special name. So instead of calling Rabia Shafiq ambassador of Pakistan, we call her High Commissioner of Pakistan. I don't know whether that confers on you any special privileges or not. But we're very pleased that that the ambassador of Pakistan to Singapore is the third speaker in this series. And I've invited her to talk about Pakistan's role as mediator in the US-Iran war. This is so important to the world. As you all know, on the 28th of February this year, the United States and Israel launched an attack against Iran. And in retaliation, Iran attacked its neighbors. Those that are hosting American bases. And the Strait of Hormuz was closed to international shipping. So the impact was not just between these countries, but to the whole world. So, the world was very pleased when Pakistan emerged as a mediator. And it was Pakistan that proposed to the United States and Iran to stop fighting and observe a ceasefire, initially for 2 weeks. Pakistan then proposed to President Trump to extend the ceasefire without a terminal date. In preparation for its role, Pakistan invited the foreign ministers of the three countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, to meet in Islamabad. And I think this helped to prepare Pakistan to play the role of mediator when it invited delegations from the United States and Iran to meet in Islamabad. Although the first round of talks were inconclusive, what is important is that the two sides continue to talk to each other through Pakistan. And I now invite Rabia to share with us her insight on Pakistan's role and the way forward. Rabia, the floor is yours.
Hello and good afternoon. I've been told that I have to speak very close into the mic, so I hope I'm audible to everyone at the back. Okay, great. Again, good afternoon, ambassadors, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to address this distinguished gathering today on a subject of topical relevance: Pakistan's diplomatic role in facilitating engagement and de-escalation between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran. At the outset, allow me to express my appreciation to Professor Tomiko and the organizers for providing this important platform for reflection and dialogue on questions that sit at the intersection of diplomacy, regional stability, and the evolving national order. The topic today cannot be understood in isolation from the broader transformations taking place in global politics. Indeed, Pakistan's diplomatic facilitation must be viewed in the backdrop of an evolving international system and the emerging role of middle power countries. The contemporary international system is undergoing profound structural transition. The certainties that characterize the immediate post-Cold War order have gradually given way to a more diffused and complex geopolitical environment. The unipolar moment that once appeared definitive has increasingly evolved into a more contested and pluralistic international order, which is marked by the simultaneous rise of new centers of influence, shifting strategic alignments, and growing regional agency. This transformation is not merely academic in nature. It has tangible implications for interstate relations and international governance. Today's global landscape is characterized by strategic competition among major powers, fragmentation within multilateral institutions, increasing weaponization of economic and technological interdependence, and the emergence of multiple theaters of geopolitical contestation, extending from Eastern Europe to the Indo-Pacific and to the Middle East. Regional conflicts have become more interconnected with global rivalries. At the same time, this evolving international environment has created greater diplomatic space for responsible middle powers to contribute constructively towards regional stability and conflict management. This development reflects an important reality of contemporary diplomacy. In an increasingly fragmented global order, the management of crises can no longer rest exclusively upon major powers alone. Durable diplomatic engagement increasingly requires credible intermediaries capable of maintaining channels of communications across political divides. Middle powers today contribute not merely as observers of international politics, but as active stakeholders in the management of international order. It is within this broader strategic context that Pakistan's ongoing diplomatic engagement with US and Iran must be understood. Pakistan occupies a unique geopolitical and diplomatic position. A country situated at the crossroads of South and Central Asia and the Middle East, Pakistan has historically maintained relationships across diverse geopolitical constituencies. Pakistan enjoys historic ties with our neighbor Iran, rooted in history, culture, and regional interconnectedness. Since the Iranian Revolution, Pakistan Embassy in Washington, D.C. has looked after Iranian interests in the US. Similarly, Pakistan has maintained an enduring and multifaceted relationship with the US, including security cooperation, economic engagement, and regional diplomacy for more than 7 decades. This dual engagement does not position Pakistan as a partisan actor within regional rivalries. Rather, it places Pakistan in a position where it can contribute responsibly toward dialogue, de-escalation, and bridging differences at moments of heightened regional tension. Ladies and gentlemen, my remarks today are divided in 3 sections. First, I shall detail the motivations and strategic drivers of our facilitative efforts. Second, I shall outline Pakistan's ongoing diplomatic engagement and mediation efforts between the US and Iran, including the principles that have guided our approach. And third, I shall offer some observations regarding the way forward, particularly concerning the continued importance of diplomacy, communication channels, and regional de-escalation while avoiding speculation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to emphasize at the outset that Pakistan's engagement in the present context has not been driven by geopolitical adventurism, alignment politics, or strategic opportunism. At a time when conflicts are intensifying and trust in international institutions is eroding, diplomacy remains the only credible and sustainable pathway to peace. The challenges confronting the international community today demand a renewed commitment to dialogue, cooperation, and respect for law. Pakistan has consistently championed the peaceful resolution of disputes through dialogue, mediation, and good offices. Pakistan's facilitative role has been guided by a principled and consistent foreign policy outlook grounded in 3 core considerations. Number 1, the imperative for regional peace and stability. Number 2, the belief that dialogue and diplomacy must remain the primary instruments for the resolution of disputes. And lastly, the recognition that escalation in the Middle East carries consequences that extend far beyond the immediate theater of conflict. For Pakistan, instability in the Gulf region is not a distant geopolitical abstraction. It directly affects economic stability, energy security, maritime commerce, diaspora communities, and the broader strategic equilibrium of the wider region. It is against this backdrop that Pakistan undertook diplomatic efforts aimed at facilitating communication and de-escalation between US and Iran. Pakistan shares a border of nearly 1,000 kilometers with Iran. This is not a distinct conflict for Pakistan, as it is a matter that directly affects our internal stability and regional security environment. Any escalation between the US and Iran risks transforming the broader region into a zone of instability with immediate spillover effects for Pakistan. Pakistan has already endured more than 40 years of turbulence due to conflict on our western border in Afghanistan. Pakistani people and our armed forces have and are still paying a very high price by sacrificing their lives and suffering economic losses because of protracted instability in the region. The whole region has been held hostage to this insecurity, being deprived of the numerous benefits that regional connectedness entails. For us, preventing another major conflict on our western border is not merely a diplomatic choice. It is a strategic necessity. In a region already facing complex security dynamics, Pakistan cannot afford another destabilizing conflict next door. Moreover, we are heavily reliant on Middle Eastern energy supplies. Much of the global oil trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global shipping route for goods and energy. A safe and open Strait of Hormuz would not only be important for regional peace and prosperity, but also critical for global energy security. Pakistan believes that a prolonged closure of the strait would not only severely undermine global energy security and disrupt the supply of other essential commodities, but would also diminish prospects for lasting peace and stability in the region. This conflict has already caused unwarranted death and destruction. It may take years to restore stability and economic growth. That's why Pakistan has called for security of ships and crew members and the safe and swift passage of civilian ships and restoration of normal passage through the strait. For a developing economy like Pakistan, even moderate increase in oil prices can have severe consequences. Inflation rises, transport and electricity costs increase, industrial production slows, and pressure mounts on foreign exchange reserves, directly affecting daily lives of ordinary Pakistanis. Pakistan's role must also be understood through the lens of strategic autonomy and balanced diplomacy. One of the unique aspects of Pakistan's position is that we have historic and fraternal relations with Iran and all countries in the Gulf region. We have a long-standing and multifaceted relationship with the US and understand its concerns. Very few countries in the Muslim world possess the ability to communicate credibly with all sides without being viewed entirely through the prism of one camp or another. This creates diplomatic space, and with that space comes responsibility. Pakistan recognized that it could potentially serve as a bridge for communication as it was trusted by both parties. Our leadership understood that in today's interconnected geopolitical environment, neutrality does not mean passivity. Responsible neutrality can also mean active engagement for peace. Pakistan has always emphasized diplomacy, connectivity, economic cooperation, and regional integration as central pillars of its foreign policy. Mediation efforts in moments of crisis reinforce Pakistan's position as a state that seeks solutions rather than confrontation. Ladies and gentlemen, from the earliest stages of escalation, Pakistan unequivocally emphasized the need for dialogue, restraint, and respect for international law and state sovereignty. Pakistan consistently underscored that further militarization of the situation would carry grave implications, not merely for the Middle East, but more broadly for international peace and security. Pakistan regretted the breakdown of talks and outbreak of hostilities in the Middle East. We condemned the unwarranted attacks against Iran as the attacks came at a time when diplomatic efforts were underway to reach a peaceful and negotiated solution. We also strongly condemned the attacks by Iran against the brotherly countries of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE, and underscored the need to exercise maximum restraint. We urged all sides to refrain from any further actions that may undermine the security and territorial integrity of other regional countries. In the following days, Pakistan ramped up its active diplomatic efforts for cessation of hostilities. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar undertook visits to key regional countries and held numerous telephone conversations with their counterparts across the world. During all these interactions, our leadership repeatedly reaffirmed Pakistan's support for peaceful resolution through dialogue and sustained diplomatic engagement. Pakistan's diplomacy during this period reflected the quieter but often more consequential dimension of statecraft, that is, maintaining communication channels, facilitating engagement, and emphasizing peace at a time when direct communication between parties had become increasingly difficult. In this regard, Pakistan undertook efforts aimed at facilitating diplomatic contact and preserving space for dialogue between the two involved parties. On 29th March, the foreign ministers of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt met in Islamabad for important consultations on the situation in the Middle East, efforts to de-escalate violence, and promote peace in the region. These interactions were valuable in further strengthening Pakistan's cooperation and coordination with these countries across areas of mutual interest and pursuing dialogue and diplomacy as viable pathways to prevent conflicts. Later on 31st March, Deputy Prime Minister visited China at the invitation of his Chinese counterpart to hold discussions on regional developments as well as bilateral and global issues. Pakistan and China agreed on a 5-point initiative for restoring peace and stability in the Gulf and Middle East region, which called for, number 1, immediate cessation of hostilities, number 2, start of peace talks, number 3, security of non-military targets, number 4, ensuring security of shipping lanes, and lastly, reaffirming primacy of the UN Charter. Following a request by our Prime Minister, Iran and the US, together with their allies, agreed to an immediate 2-week ceasefire on 8th April 2026. We remain grateful to both countries for responding to the call made by Prime Minister Sharif for ceasefire and for accepting the invitation for holding peace talks in Islamabad. Pakistan, as a responsible country, took the initiative of hosting high-level delegations from Iran and US in Islamabad on 11th-12th April for direct negotiations. These discussions were facilitated by Pakistan's strong engagement with both sides, along with its diplomatic initiatives aimed at promoting peace and stability in the region. The delegation of Iran, some of you must be aware, was headed by Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Bagher Ghalibaf, accompanied by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. While the US delegation was led by Vice President J.D. Vance, along with Special Envoy Mr. Steve Witkoff and Mr. Jared Kushner. The participation of senior negotiating teams from both sides in Islamabad reflected their strong commitment to the Islamabad talks and their trust and confidence in Pakistan's facilitative role. Deputy Prime Minister Dar and Chief of Defense Forces and Chief of Army Staff, Field Marshal Munir, helped mediate several rounds of intense and constructive negotiations between the two sides, during which an array of issues was discussed. The talks continued for 21 hours, that's duration of actual negotiations. Overall, the process continued for about 30 hours if we count the movement of delegations and momentary breaks for meals and coffee. As such, the entire negotiation process was intensive and extensive, both in terms of scope and timelines. The engagement between US and Iran through Pakistan constitutes a major turning point and an unprecedented diplomatic achievement. Although the two parties were unable to reach an agreement in the first round of talks, Pakistan remains hopeful that they will stay engaged and continue building on the progress made during the Islamabad talks. In his remarks at the conclusion of these talks, the Deputy Prime Minister said that it was imperative that the parties continue to uphold their commitment to the ceasefire. The talks mark an important and historic milestone, and the international community must build on the opportunity provided by the ceasefire extension as well as the groundwork done during the first round of Islamabad talks. Pakistan is confident that through continued dialogue and diplomacy, outstanding differences would be overcome. Subsequently, the Iranian foreign minister visited Islamabad on 24th April and later after visiting Oman. That provided another opportunity for comprehensive consultations on ways to reach a diplomatic solution between the two conflicting parties. Our Interior Minister who went to Islamabad, who's still in Tehran as we speak, so he's gone there to meet the Iranian leadership, and he has reaffirmed the depth of our bilateral ties and reiterated our commitment to sustainable peace and stability in the region. Earlier, the army chief had also gone with the Interior Minister to Tehran in the same context. Pakistan has been widely recognized for its constructive diplomatic engagement in supporting de-escalation, ceasefire efforts, and the broader pursuit of stability between the US and Iran. Through sustained interaction with both sides, Islamabad has sought to encourage dialogue, facilitate exchange of messages, and help create conditions and space conducive to meaningful negotiations. At the same time, there have been attempts by detractors to cast doubts on our sincere and well-intentioned efforts. It is important to remain vigilant against detractors of regional stability as they try to make every effort to derail the peace initiative. As regards the specific issues being discussed during these negotiations, Pakistan as a facilitator is committed to uphold the confidentiality and integrity throughout the negotiation process. It is for the involved parties to interpret the outcome of their engagement and to identify or define specific issues that, in their view, have so far prevented an agreement. As an honest facilitator and mediator, it is incumbent on us to uphold the trust of respective parties. Ladies and gentlemen, with this I come to the final part of my remarks. What next? Here I wish to proceed cautiously. Diplomacy requires restraint not only in action but also in language. Therefore, I will avoid speculation about outcomes, timelines, or confidential negotiations. However, several broad observations can still be made, which I share. First, despite setbacks and interruptions, channels of communication between the US and Iran appear not to have collapsed entirely. Proposals and counter-proposals are being exchanged between the two parties through Pakistan, which is significant. Second, Pakistan's constructive diplomatic engagement towards the pursuit of stability between US and Iran continues. Pakistan remains committed to regional stability and international peace, reflecting our preference for principled, dialogue-oriented diplomacy in addressing complex geopolitical challenges. We seek to support conditions in which diplomacy and communication remain possible. Third, future progress will likely depend on incremental confidence-building measures rather than dramatic breakthroughs. Historically, US-Iran relations have been marked by deep mistrust, accumulated over 4 decades. No single meeting, mediator, or proposal can erase that history overnight. Therefore, progress will likely emerge gradually through technical understandings, humanitarian measures, security assurances, and carefully sequenced diplomatic engagement. In this regard, I would like to mention that recently, 31 crew members aboard a vessel seized by the US were evacuated to Pakistan and Iran via Singapore. This was a major confidence-building measure by the US taken on humanitarian grounds. We also remain grateful to Singapore for facilitating this repatriation effort. Fourth, regional actors will continue to matter. The Gulf states, China, Turkey, and other stakeholders all have interest in preventing a wider regional conflict. Pakistan's mediation role therefore exists within a broader diplomatic ecosystem rather than in isolation, buoyed by the support of our regional partners. Finally, Pakistan must continue balancing principles with pragmatism. Pakistan's diplomacy in this context has reflected several enduring themes of its foreign policy, which includes support for peaceful resolution of disputes, avoidance of regional polarization, promotion of peace and stability, and commitment to dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude by saying that Pakistan's role should be understood not through sensational narratives, but through the quieter and more difficult work of sustaining communication, reducing mistrust, and keeping diplomatic possibilities alive. Whether future negotiations ultimately succeed depends on many factors beyond the control of any single country. Nevertheless, Pakistan's contribution has been clear, that is to encourage restraint, to facilitate dialogue, to resist escalation, and to support peaceful engagement at a moment of considerable regional danger. Pakistan has consistently supported dialogue and diplomacy as the means to resolve conflicts. Our leadership continues to urge both sides to engage with a positive spirit. The support provided by Pakistan's regional and international partners has been very encouraging, and we continue to work with all for seeking durable peace. Pakistan stands ready to continue providing all possible support to the two sides to reach an amicable solution sooner rather than later. I thank you all. Thank you.